You don't have to look very far. You can open any newspaper these days, open any Facebook page, and someone's got an opinion on the political process. There's clearly an elevated conversation. There's something afoot. And pundits, I think we're all really pundits, aren't we, say there's a crisis. We're in a political crisis. And it's in this context, of course, of another crisis, the climate change. And the window to effectively mitigate climate change is closing rapidly. We have the crisis of industrial chemicals, where the wombs of mothers across the globe are bathing their children in a soup of toxic chemicals, all with a host of health impacts. And I'm not just talking about human mothers, all mothers. We have an obesity crisis that's crumbling health systems around the globe. We have this crazy notion that has extended into society of this hierarchy of human values, so that the color of our skin somehow means we have more value than others. And it's important to step back. And when I step back, what I see is really systemic inflammation at the global level. And that's what these crises are telling us. And as integrative clinicians, I think we can understand that it's important to look for some connection. And the connection that I see through all these stories is a connection of a way of thinking, a way of sort of linear reductionist thinking, a mechanistic worldview that's been embedded for the last 300 years or so, and is really the basis, foundational basis of the biomedical model. And as we're here today, we're learning that all these issues are connected, and these world problems can't be considered in isolation. And that we're faced with one complex crisis that's happening not only within healthcare and within clinical medicine, but more broadly into our communities and the planet. And so it's exciting. It's exciting in some ways and sort of terrifying in another, because we're in this we're in this era of transformation where things are shifting radically. And that's what I hear when I hear all these pundits and the fear and the language coming out from the politics of the day. But it's exciting because we have you guys, we have you gals, we have us all, because we need integrative thinkers. We need folks who can be the catalytic agents of change and sort of share what's happening out into your communities. So this is why I think the integrative health community and why are the change agents of the day, and why I want to intersect with you more, and why I'm happy to be here. So that's something, systems thinking, moving from linear to systems thinking, and it's important as we think and talk about health creation, because it's within the clinical setting, it's moving from a care of sick model to a preventative model to a health creation model. As John has shared, or I don't know if he shared, but I'm part of this sort of global think tank on health creation. We call it the Creating Health Collaborative, and we've been meeting for the last couple of years, and we have some players from around the globe, and we pull various individuals and organizations thinking about health and healthy communities together. And what we've distilled through the work, the sort of the foundational work that they're doing, a variety of principles. And when you look at them, they're sort of self-evident in many ways, but I think we tend to forget about them. And we don't really have time to delve into all of these. I'm going to touch on one or two in a moment. But I did sort of the web links there as well. We also have an ebook series that some of you might be interested in, and it's on Amazon and iBook, I guess it is. But it was a series of essays that was published by Stanford Social Innovation Review. And I think it'll be sort of a helpful collection of stories if you're interested. And it's free. It's free on the web. So just wanted to highlight those. So let's dig into one of those. And I think this is really at the core of this evolving concept of health creation. And it's that we have to let community define what matters. Because creating health is about starting from where and how people think and feel about health, and we build from there. So people don't wake up in the morning wondering about their blood pressure, their hemoglobin A1C levels, right? They want to be able to go to the park with their son, their daughter, their father, their mother, who be it, right? They want to feel secure. They want to feel and have nourishing relationships, a sense of control over one's life, physical functioning. They want safe housing. That's what health is. It's about how one feels, right? And so we have to understand this when we're talking about health. And I think it's what you understand in the clinical setting when a patient comes, you have to meet them as a partner in this work and hear in how they feel, because that's where health starts. So that's absolutely essential. And the Commons Health Network has been having over the last 3 years, it's becoming an annual conference because people just keep saying, let's do this again, let's do this again. And what we do is we bring community organizations together with healthcare providers, insurance plans and everything. They're all sort of part of this big sort of party. We break people up into conversations. What always happens is so interesting because there's this shared interest in thinking and moving and improving health and healthy communities. But there's two different languages that are happening. There's a healthcare medicalized language that wants to improve something that sort of impose something that can only be measured, when communities could really care less about it. So we have to understand we have to start where communities start. And in this richness of conversation, this sort of interstitial pool of ideas, we're creating a whole new language. It's really exciting. The other piece that I wanted to share is that, and this is what I call place-based healthcare. And that's what I think is at the core of health creation. It's place-based. And it makes sense because and we have to operate at the individual and community levels. But it makes sense because isn't health about relationship? Right? And this is where relationship happens, in the grocery store, in the park, at the soccer game, or the swimming pool, the music lessons, or wherever one may be. It's about relationship. And so many of you might be familiar with the ecological model of health, and you sort of take away all these labels and stuff. Really, at the core of this is the ecological model of health. And there's many different diagrams for this. But at the core, and it's this notion of working at the individual and community levels is interesting, because when you look at the Aboriginal community health, the Aboriginal community in Australia, the Aboriginals have a definition of health that doesn't divide health from the individual and community level. Health means to them the health of and the spiritual health and well-being of the community and of they as individuals. There's no two separate definitions. The same as many of the First Nation peoples in my home country of Canada. You don't have individual and community health. It's one and all. So we have to operate at those levels and think of the health of individual and communities one and the same. So I'm going to just share some offerings from some of this work and my experiences over the last 10 or 15 years in the hopes that it will sort of stir some conversation for a dialogue after we're done. A couple of these things are what I think are as exciting and have some potential, or I get a little bit excited about. And there's something called the Community Health Needs Assessments. I don't know if any of you have heard about these, but it's a requirement that has come out of the Affordable Care Act, and it's sort of something that's not really talked about, but I think has some really some exciting opportunities to catalyze health creation. And the piece of it that is exciting is that there's a requirement that hospitals engage with their communities and have them as partners in these health assessments. And there's a whole variety of it's limited in many ways, but what's exciting is that for the first time, really, hospitals are having to sit down with communities and sort of share a conversation. And it's through this conversation that the change can really happen. And the other piece that's somewhat related are primarily funded right now through statewide and federal innovation grants. These are called Accountable Communities for Health, or Accountable Communities models. And I don't know if anyone just here is familiar with those. But similar, these are place-based models of, we can call them healthy communities or health creation. But what it does is it forces healthcare institutions within a place, right, a geographical location, to actually sit down together with their community. And so that's unique, because we have to understand the community sees these towers of glass and steel as sort of separate from themselves, and they're in competition. And why would hospitals and healthcare compete? It's sort of this strange notion. And if you step back, community doesn't get this. So it sort of forces a whole new and even more elevated dialogue than what's happening within the CHNA process. So that's where I get excited. I just want to talk about food, because I think food, and good food really, and food system is really where we're going to see a lot of this catalytic health creation work. And is anyone here familiar with the term good food? So there's some of us. So I'm just going to share what good food is. And what's exciting to me is sort of this transformation of the good food movement into actual prototypes of good food models. And let me share what those are. Over the last 15 years or so, a variety of the actors interested in a variety of sort of food-based value systems have been coming together and sort of hammering out and having dialogue around what is healthy food. And they realize healthy has sort of been captured by the medical industrial complex, if you will. It's sort of medicalized food and made food a nutrient. So it's not really about food as medicine, right? It's about food as health. And so when the good food community has brought the values of humane treatment of animals, environmental sustainability, so the use of hormones and pesticides and so forth, the labor conditions in the fields and the fair treatment of workers throughout the whole value chain in restaurants and so forth, and then local socioeconomic health. And so the term good food incorporates all those different value systems. It's really a systemic approach, right? So it's not one component of food, it's a broad systemic approach. And this is where we have to move. And so what happened last year, even the Institutes of Medicine has recognized that we need to take a systemic approach if we're going to solve the challenges of the 21st century of our food system. So this movement is moving into models. And in cities such as Chicago and right now in Minneapolis, Seattle, Oakland, and LA, organizations and even governments are pushing their anchor institutions, the colleges and universities and hospitals and so forth, that buy substantial volumes of food to adopt clear metrics and provide some sunshine and transparency. And this has the potential in the next couple of years to radically shift and build local food models. Very, very exciting. And we have to remember as well, even though there's sort of this ongoing battle around GMO labeling, there's been this radical shift within the packaged food industry where the market share has changed. It's lost $4 billion if people have moved to fresh and organic over the last year. It's changing rapidly. So in this period of transformation, there's some exciting work within sort of the whole food system model that's happening. So I'm about to close here, but I think this sort of circles back to how I started, sort of a lot of the challenges and crises that we're seeing that are really connected. And if we're truly going to be able to move forward, I think we have to move forward with unconditional love. And I was going to joke and say this is probably the easiest piece, but really we all know it's the hardest work that we have to do. Because what we have out there is we're having to shift paradigms that have been put in place for 300 years, 400 years. And we're having to redo many of our systems, food systems, industrial systems, energy systems, and it's going to change and challenge people. And so we have to build and improve our skills of deep listening and use techniques such as meditation and mindfulness and so forth. So I think we should be collectively excited by how these various practices can improve our ability to work with an open mind.
Thanks so much for watching, and for more great clips like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I've created a special free video just for you. It's called the 5 Steps to Becoming a Leader in Your Wellness Community, and it'll give you some of the starting points on how to position yourself as the leader in your zip code of your health community. All you have to do is click on the link below.